わからないものだね。
ほら、見たかったんでしょ、私の演技。もっと私を見て。かなちゃん、かなちゃん、かなちゃん、有馬かな。
Episode 8, 𝐿𝐶𝐻𝐻𝐿, Season 2. This episode drummed up a lot of different feelings between Kana, between Aqua, between Akane. Actually, I think Akane probably stole the moment of this show for me with her big reaction towards Kana this episode. I thought it was the cutest thing, just to be 100% honest. Regardless, though, one of the things I did want to touch on, and I was kind of like, I was thinking in myself, like as I was starting today's review, I was like, where do I want to fit this in? Let me just say it out the bat. When it comes to Aqua, I'm always kind of conflicted as a viewer. And for me, I think, there's nothing hidden about the fact that I think 𝐿𝐶𝐻𝐻𝐿 has one of the best episode ones of any season of any anime. I think it really is like a top 10. Like episode 1 was like a movie. It was top 10 for sure. Feelings, action, like blood. I mean, great acting, everything. And one of the things that it did was instill the fact that Aqua in his prior life was he wasn't recognized on TV, but I would still say he was a pretty successful doctor. Even the fact that he was in a hospital, kind of in the boonies a little bit, he was still a successful doctor and he lived a full life. So as I'm always interacting with the character of Aqua, I can never remove the fact that not only did he live to 30-something, 40, probably like 30s, he lived half of a full life in his last life. He was a kid, a teenager, an adult, a successful doctor. So he must have had a lot of knowledge, not only to be a doctor, he must have had a lot of knowledge dealing with patients. Being a doctor, you're kind of like a part-time therapist. You're dealing with a lot of different patients, a lot of different things that they bring to the table. So your customer service, in a way, is very high. And sometimes you're kind of part therapist, right? That's how he got so close to Ruby and, who she was in her prior life. So when it comes to Aqua, I can never quite remove the fact that the way he acts, the way he decides to interact with his current life, his life of revenge, and the decisions that he makes, I always kind of find it interesting or weird. It's like, well, where did all of your maturity and your life experience from your last life, outside of, he's smart about the way he goes about things. He's smart about, he's intelligent, but like, where did your maturity and life experience come into this life, right? Like this episode, he's being schooled on PTSD and triggers, and Akane is helping him and stuff. And he's kind of coming to a realization of he has these certain trigger words and certain trigger events that is going to drum up a really traumatic experience for him with Ai's death and her dying in his arms, or, all that stuff. And I totally get it. It was a very traumatic experience. But again, remember, and this is what I try to do, or I can't help myself but remembering that he was a doctor who should be very well informed with PTSD and stuff like that, just by happenstance of dealing with patients who may have almost died and maybe didn't, and maybe lost limbs, and maybe have it's just impossible as a doctor to not have known kind of like what he's going through. At least in my head, I imagine that it'd be almost impossible. On top of that, he's kind of driving this force through with acting and stuff and everything. It's just, I always just try to remember, like, but he was a grown man in his past life. So it's like, he's getting life advice from this director guy, which I thought, the moment he shared with the director and the director putting the pieces together, and he was saying, hey, your your mama, and like, I love how the director put everything together, and he's been very cautious about when to reveal that he knows, Aqua's in for, you know, that he knows his past and he knows that the things he's going through. He's been very cautious and conscientious of when he brings it up to Aqua, and I thought this was a really good moment for him to do so, and do it in a way to show that, you know, he knows this, but he really cares, and he really just cares about Aqua and what he's doing with his life. But he got a lot of life lessons from him, and you know, I don't think there's any age we get to where, you know, somebody can't instill knowledge and stuff. But again, I'm just reminded of the fact that, you know, he's a really grown man. And then he, you know, top the years that he's lived now in this new life. On top of that, it's like, if I was in his shoes, you know, I'm not a successful doctor or anything, but I don't think I would need to be told some of the things that I feel like he needs to be told more and more. And I guess, you know, maturity isn't always relevant to age, but it's just, it feel like he had a lot of life experience that it's kind of like, I don't know. Anyways, I harped on that for a really long time. Back to episode number 8. I love the fact that this episode really explored Kana. And Kana is my favorite character in the show. Her pepper dance, you know, her green pepper dance, and what she's been through and how she got here. And this episode provided even more color. It grabbed a brush and it just painted a lot more color to Kana this episode. And we got to see a lot of the trauma that she had. And most, if not all of her trauma is related to her experience with acting, but then her mom. And her mom was a big one. And I personally had a lot of big feelings watching what she went through as a kid, because I think, you know, in life, one of the worst things you can do, especially as a parent, you know, specifically as a parent to your kid, is try to live vicariously through your child, or try to push, you know, something that you would have liked to do onto them, or, you know, try to manage them because you failed. You know what I mean? Like, because I wasn't a singer, you know, I want to just, you know, I'm going to harp in with my kid, be a singer. If I wasn't successful at basketball or football or something, I'm just going to be like, I'm just going to harp it to my child and make sure like they're that, like, they could continue my dream. And I personally, like, maybe some might get really, you know, offended by it, but I really think like that's probably the worst way a parent can be. Now, I'm not saying, you know, try to not, you know, share your love for something with your kid. I'm not saying, you know, share your hobbies with your kid. But if they're truly if they're not interested, or like if you're making it happen and it's not naturally happening with your kid, like, I think that's just like the worst type of parent to be. And in this episode, it showed how her mom was kind of like, you know, she was living her mom's dream, and her mom was, you know, relishing in being, you know, part of the culture and actors and parties. And when her daughter wasn't getting enough time, she was being very vocal, and that kind of hurt Kana in a lot of different ways. And because she was getting obsessive about Kana in a very unhealthy way, that affected her family home, and that drove her dad out. And you never should have a reason to cheat, by the way. Like, I think her dad was probably a piece of shit too. But regardless, you know, that drove him to, you know, get divorced or whatever. And I was like, man, Kana really went through it. And, you know, that kind of parent is just awful. And obviously she ended up on the set with Aqua and the director and stuff. She ended up refinding her passion on her own and deciding that, okay, this is the future that was chosen for me, but out of my own choice, I want to continue with this and just be really bullish about it. But she was able to distinctly, at a young age, to make that decision for herself, not to please her mom, not to please her family, but to do it for herself. And I just love how deep Kana's character is, from showing us that she made that decision at a really young age, which is really crazy for a kid to do. That she had enough life experience at that point, and enough, you know, views of the world at, you know, under 10 years old, which is crazy. And then all the stuff that she went through with her mom and stuff. I was like, man, that just drummed up a lot of big feelings in me. And then seeing that come out on stage with Aqua, you know, having a great opening for her, and for her to really kind of set the stage on fire, so much so that Akane was like, you know, fangirling over her. And I just love to see that Kana redemption story. The episode ultimately ended on Aqua's big moment where he's basically using the power of evil versus good. And yeah, I think we're gonna end up, next week with him having his breakout moment, but doing it his own way with vengeance and anger and all the other stuff. So yeah, good episode. I think it was really held up by Kana this episode for me personally. Some of the other side noise and even the Aqua stuff was fine, Aqua, I always just kind of struggle with as a character for reasons I mentioned earlier. So let me know what you guys thought about this episode down in the comments below. If you made it to this point, I always appreciate you guys. Hit me with the like before you leave. I'm sure I lost a lot of people with my Aqua rant at the beginning of the episode, and I'm sure I'll hear about it in the comments, but that's what I look forward to. And let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. So I'll see you guys next week. FYI, if you're still to this point, I'm on vacation next week, so I may or may not have the episode up in time, so it might be late in the week. So I hope you're still there. All right, peace.